Paul Perrello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. On November 18th, 1928, at the Colony Theater in New York City, motion picture history was made with the debut of the cartoon Steamboat Willie. It featured a little animated character, a mouse, who we have come to know and love as Mickey Mouse. It also marked the debut of his girlfriend, Minnie Mouse. Steamboat Willie was the third of Mickey's films to be produced, but it was the first to be distributed after Walt Disney, after having seen the movie The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson, committed himself and his small studio to producing the first fully synchronized sound cartoon. Well, the red shorts, large yellow shoes, and white glove wearing Mickey is one of the world's most recognizable characters. He is also the iconic symbol of the Walt Disney Company and the first animated character to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. My guest on this edition of the Philly Factor is here to talk about Mickey Mouse. My guest is author Aaron Goldberg. Aaron is the author of the best-selling book, The Disney Story, chronicling the man, the mouse, and the parks, Disney Declassified, and the wonders of Walt Disney World. And Aaron, thanks once again for being with us.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
People say, really, 90 years, we're celebrating this iconic figure, and some people really don't know the backstory, don't know the history of Mickey Mouse. His birthday is pretty much etched in stone now as November 18th, 1928.
Right.
But really, if you wanted to be technical as well as you really want to be succinct about this, he was in two previous cartoon shorts that didn't really see the light of day back in 1928 until after Steamboat Willie.
Right. It's funny, and we celebrate it now at November 18th because that was the debut in the Colony Theater in New York City. Mm-hmm. But prior to the 70s, the 1970s, Mickey's birthday was celebrated anywhere from September to December. Whenever Disney sort of wanted to promote something or take a different angle, they went that way. But yeah, so the Mickey Mouse as we know it, the Steamboat Willie, the first one with sound, but there were two others. Plain Crazy, which was the original one. It actually debuted, it didn't even really debut, it was screened Hollywood May of 1928, and it did not pick up distribution. Nobody was really interested in it. Actually, it was a sort of take on Charles Lindbergh's Solo Flight Across the Atlantic. Yeah. And then there was the Galloping Gaucho was number 2. Again, not much interest. So Walt sort of, went back to the drawing board, so to speak, and put some sound and put it all together, and boom, we got Mickey Mouse.
But this was not his first attempt at animation. There was an actual character before Mickey Mouse that Walt thought he owned. Right. But it was really pulled out from underneath him.
Right. Actually, even before, so that was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Right. Even before Oswald, there was Walt actually went to Hollywood in 1923. 1923, around October, he actually devised a sort of a mix of, it was called the Alice Comedies, a mix of live action and animation. And a distributor in New York City picked it up and had Walt, go through and make, I think they made about, it was 23 to 1927. So there's quite a few episodes there. And at that point, Alice was successful, but they wanted to go all cartoon, all animation. So that's sort of how Oswald came to be. They created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit in 1927. They basically made about a season or about 26 episodes. Walt went back to the distributor, asked for more money to make, sort of improve the product, and was told no more money. And as a matter of fact, you don't even own the rights. We do.
Yeah.
So.
And not only did they pull Oswald away from Walt, but they also hired away
much of the staff.
Many of the animators, right?
Yeah. 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 So it's kind of interesting how this, cultural icon Mickey Mouse, sort of was born out of necessity. The Disney brothers, Walt and Roy had a lot tied up in the, in the studio, and with no more Oswald, they had to come up with something else. So sort of Mickey was born out of necessity to save the family business.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people think that it was, there are all these different theories that are out there, and we've talked before about the Disney PR machine, and they'll put their spin on whatever it is that they want to put out there. But some say, well, the idea for a mouse came because Walt, as a young animator, had a pet mouse or a mouse that was in the studio. Right. Then there was, the story that Walt on that train ride back to California from New York.
Right.
Knew he had to come up with something, so he decided on
The
a
mouse.
mouse. And then there's also the story that Mickey's real name at the beginning was Mortimer, and Walt's wife Lillian despised that name.
Right.
And she came up with the name of Mickey.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like an amalgamation of all those. There's stories of Walt being in Kansas City and working, and there was a little mouse that come to his desk, and he'd sort of feed him cheese. And then there's the reality of he lost Oswald, and if you sort of look at Oswald and you sort of look at Mickey, there's strong resemblance.
Sure.
Sort of just smash down Oswald's ears and you get Mickey ears. And then there was Mortimer. Mortimer was that was Walt's original name for what he wanted to be Mickey, and it sort of didn't sail, so it became Mickey. But interestingly, in 1936, there's a cartoon short called Mickey's Rival. And Mickey's rival was another mouse called Mortimer. So if Mickey's a little clumsy and a little shapely and round, Mortimer was a little bit more statuesque, and he had a little, almost looked like sort of like a rat face, but he had a little bit more swagger, and they competed for Minnie in that episode.
Yeah.
So Mortimer sort of came full circle there.
And there's also the fact that Walt saw the Jazz Singer, which was the first talkie movie, and he realized that in order to make his mark in the world of motion pictures, that he had to do something different.
Sure.
And so that's where he put sound, sound, music, voice into Steamboat Willie. And when we talk about voice, Walt actually provides the voice of Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah, shoestring budget. Walt was originally the voice for, if you go back and watch Steamboat Willie, he was actually Minnie's voice. He was the little parrot's voice. He sort of was everybody's voice there to to get the job done.
Yep. Did Walt actually sketch, draw Mickey Mouse?
No. Contrary to popular belief, he did not. There was another gentleman, Ub Iwerks, and he was sort of, there's a great book about him. It's called The Hand Behind the Mouse.
Yep.
And Ub was actually the guy who sort of, I guess, put pen to paper and, put it all together and sort of created Mickey.
Yeah. What do we know? Obviously, Walt was the inspiration for this character, I suspect.
Yes.
So did he explain to Ub what he wanted or what he had envisioned? And
yeah, it's sort of exactly. Walt was, I think one of his, the genius of Walt Disney was his, ability to see talent and delegate, and figured, Ub was an incredible artist. So let's, put it all together here and have Ub make it happen.
Yeah. 90 years later, we're still talking about Mickey Mouse. Perhaps he is more popular today than ever before. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
I talk about merchandising Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look at Campbell soup cans. Mickey's
everywhere.
on that. He's on Oreo cookies. He's on ice cream. He's everywhere. And that's not even including what's going on inside the theme parks.
Right.
So really, when Walt often would say that it all started with a mouse, it really did start with Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I mean, the marketing machine is unbelievable. You go home and you can watch the Disney Channel. You could drive in your car and listen to Disney radio. You go to the supermarket and buy your, Disney branded food, and it's everywhere. Can't escape it.
Yeah. Why is he so popular? I mean, look, he's just an animated character. I mean, he hasn't come up with a cure for cancer. He hasn't, although, we could say that he has helped people deal with various bumps in the road. I mean, he's one of those characters that, will go to Children's Hospital here in Philadelphia and, entertain the children, and they get comfort in seeing Mickey Mouse. But, why is it that we are so enamored with this character?
It's it really is amazing if you think about it. I think initially, the debut of Mickey Mouse was sort of around the Great Depression, after the stock market crash, and society sort of glommed onto him. He was the everyday guy. At the end of the cartoon short, Mickey was always the winner. He always prevailed. He was always optimistic. He was always jovial, and our country just, not even the world, just took to Mickey Mouse, and it just sort of evolved and grew, and everybody who, it's sort of like a rite of passage, from. Every infant could recognize Mickey Mouse.
Sure, yeah.
Just, it's one of those things, those three magical circles makes everybody happy.
Yeah, and yet, when his career is launched in 1928, he has a bit of stardom from that, but then his career sort of hits a wall.
Yeah.
There are other characters that are introduced, to the Walt Disney Studio, Was it because he ultimately becomes the corporate icon for the Walt Disney Company, and you can't put your corporate icon in a compromising position,
Right.
but you could use a character like Donald Duck,
Sure.
who is a real rascal, and he's crotchety, and he can be mean,
Yeah.
and he's got a temper, and he could get away with some of the other things, but you can't necessarily put your corporate icon in a compromising position.
Mickey always had to be pure. Mickey always had to be the winner. And it's interesting, I think, again, if you look back to history, Donald Duck comes at many points. Donald Duck is actually even more popular than Mickey. And Donald Duck's surge in popularity comes through the 40s.
Yeah.
So now we're World War II, and Donald Duck starts to sell war bonds. He's his face is adorned on the fighter pilots. They put his picture on the side of their planes. He tells folks to pay their taxes. But he also has like a bit of an attitude.
Yeah.
And he's a little little ornery.
Yeah. And Mickey has only been in just a few feature films. I mean, one of
Right.
which is Fantasia.
Sure.
He was also in, I don't know if we can call Prince of the Pauper a feature, but it's not an animated short.
Right.
But and then of course Who's Framed Roger Rabbit. He was in that. But his popularity is tremendous, given the fact that much of his career has been in shorts,
Right.
or has been on television.
And it almost peaked, mid 1930s for all intents and purposes. Sort of Mickey drops off, mid 30s. Donald Duck picks up, and then in the 50s, it sort of comes full circle again when Walt Disney ventures into the Mickey Mouse Club on television, which was so extraordinarily successful. It was like mind-boggling. Something like 3 out of 4 television sets from 5 to 6 during the week were tuned in.
Wow.
And they're selling 25,000, like the Mickey ears a day.
Yeah.
And then comes full circle with the theme park. So Disneyland again in 1955. And so, Mickey's career is sort of, if you look at it, it's lasted all these decades, but it really sort of, had a stop and a start there for a little bit. You never really ever went away, but the popularity was, the ebb and flow of things was interesting to look at.
We're talking with Aaron Goldberg, a South Jersey author who has written 3 books on Walt Disney, the Walt Disney World Resort, as well as Disney Declassified. What's your fascination? What's your interest in Disney?
I think it was always just kind of started with Walt. Well, I mean, as a kid, we all sort of watched the movies and watched the
Wonderful World of Disney.
Wonderful World of Disney, and everybody, sort of gets, grown up on the movies and everything else. But I think as I grew up, got older and my interest, evolved, it sort of just was, an interest in Walt Disney and the genius of Walt Disney, and everything sort of comes from, it came from him.
Yeah. Walt passes away in 1966.
66,
right?
December 66.
And and we've had this conversation before. Even on his deathbed, he was coming up with the plans for Epcot.
Right.
And if Walt would have lived, even 5 or 10 years later, I suspect the Walt Disney World Resort probably would be a little bit different than what we see today. At least Epcot would have probably been a little bit different than what we know today, because Epcot was really not designed to be a theme park.
No, it actually was supposed to be sort of like a community where you'll live, you'll work. If you're not employed there, you're not living there. Everyone must have a job. It was very green before there was ever like really green.
Sure, yeah.
There was going to be different levels for traveling, so cars would be on one level, trucks would be on another, and the top would be a lot of green space and walking and sort of like the people mover and emission-free transportation. Yeah, I think that was really the main intention of the property in Florida. I feel like the theme park was sort of the afterthought, or to get people to come down. And Walt passes and sort of none of it really came to fruition.
Yeah, and yet what we see in the theme parks goes back to the original design that Walt had for Disneyland, is that it would never be completed. It would always be an evolving type of theme park. His idea for coming up with the theme park was because he felt that there was really no place for where children and parents could go and play together.
Sure.
And I think what really turned him off were some of these seedy type of theme parks that had existed. And he wanted something that was much much better, a much better experience overall for both parent and child.
Yeah, I think they had, back in those days there was the stigma of like maybe like a carnival or, you know, Coney Island or things of that nature, not anything, you know, Walt would view as, you know, being clean or wholesome or something that, you know, everybody can, you know, grandparents can take the grandkids and everybody can interact and have a great time and not just sit on the sideline and, you know, watch the kids or kind of, you know, lose patience or be annoyed or, yeah.
He, Walt was a visionary. I mean, when we talk about how he designed Disneyland, and then ultimately he was in the process of laying out the Walt Disney World Resort in, you know, in Florida. And some of the stories that I read in how he actually set up faux businesses to go in and purchase the property in Florida.
Brilliant.
Because he felt that if they knew who was really behind buying all this property, the price of the property per acre would skyrocket.
Yeah, I mean, if you're familiar, if you've ever driven or, you know, gone to Disney and down in Disney World, you know that the major thoroughfare is Interstate 4.
Yep.
So one of the shell companies that he used to buy the land, what he called I-4, A-Y-E, F-O-U-R, so I-4 company or Tomahawk Properties, and they were just came up with these fictitious names to basically there's 43 square miles of land that they purchased, and they, you know, bought it, you know, a little bit cheaper than had everybody known it was Walt Disney coming to town.
And 43 square miles, they have only cracked
it's such a
how much
small
property that they currently have developed there.
Yeah, there's like 30, I don't even remember, there's something like 20 or 30,000 acres that'll be preserved forever. They'll never use, but it's like, you know, I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's minimal what they've used in the 4 major theme parks there.
And why is that? I mean, why is it that, you know, when you drive or, you know, you go, you know, you have to drive to get onto the property, but it seems like an eternity to get there before you see any glimmer or sign that you're actually at Walt Disney World?
I think there's like a two-pronged thing working there. The first and foremost was Disneyland, he didn't buy enough land. And everything sort of sprouted up around, I think he at one point called it a neon jungle. So the buffer isn't there. You could sort of walk into Disneyland, but you could still come right back out and see Harbor Boulevard. There's hotels, motels, restaurants. With Florida, they don't have that problem. You have to drive a certain bit to actually get to the second part was make the, you know, sort of buy into, you've left, you know, all your problems, cares, worries out there, and now you're in, you know, sort of into Disney World, quote unquote, and just buy into the reality of the, you know, you're not in the real world. You're in, you know, the stage of Disney.
Yeah, Disneyland is the original theme park. Walt Disney World, you know, is the second park, and now there are parks around the globe. But they all sort of, in their own way, mimic back to Walt's childhood. I mean, Main Street USA in the Magic Kingdom goes back to that time when Walt was a kid in Missouri.
Yeah, Marceline. It's sort of like Anytown USA, turn of the century. You walk in, you get the firehouse, you get the, you know, town hall. You know, in Disneyland, you'll see the horses, you know, going up and down. The, you know, the flagpole, the facades are just, you know, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. I mean, it's a remarkable place to go and just kind of wander around Main Street and, you know, sort of think you're back in yesterday. Yeah,
and then that brutal reality sets in when it's time to go home, kids.
Yeah, or I just spent $110 to walk in.
Yeah, it's that brutal reality slap in the face once you leave. And, you know, I guess, you know, as we talk about the Walt Disney Company, we talk about Mickey Mouse, the icon for the Walt Disney Company, celebrating 90 years. You know, Mickey has taken on a variety of roles. You know, he's sort of a goodwill ambassador.
Sure.
We talked about you know, it's not uncommon to find him at a children's hospital cheering up kids who might not be able to get out. You know, he's part of the Thanksgiving Day parade here in Philadelphia, he and Minnie and some of the other Disney characters. I mean, he really has become a fabric of our life. I mean, you know, that wasn't, I guess that was always the intent, but you know, at one time the only place you could see Mickey was either in California or Walt Disney World, but it's not unusual now. There's, you know, skating ice shows. Mickey could really do it all.
Mickey
he can
gets
skate,
around.
He's a magician, he's a fireman. He really does get around.
He does get around. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, I often wonder if those were the actual intentions, you know, to get that big and grand. I think at the time Walt was looking to do something revolutionary with sound, but I'm sure in and he was obviously a dreamer and a brilliant man. But if he ever, dreamt that it would go to the magnitude that, it's one of the most, like what else says America? Coca-Cola, Mickey Mouse, McDonald's, maybe.
Yeah.
Blue Jeans. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cultural icons.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned earlier that there have been studies that have been done that he is one of the most recognizable characters because his shape is so simple. I mean, we just talk about his head with those 3 circles.
Right.
Child psychologists and psychiatrists will say, when you study him, he's very simple by design.
And he's evolved a little bit over the years. So he was originally, the lines were a little bit sharper, maybe a little more rodent-esque. But as time has progressed over the decades, his lines got a little bit softer, his belly got a little bit rounder, his eyes got a little bit bigger, so it took on more juvenile features, I guess, which is more attractive to, the children. Kids look at him and they love Mickey. They don't want to be threatened by him.
Yeah, and I think one of the things on everybody's to-do list when they go to a theme park is to make sure you get to see Mickey Mouse and have your picture taken.
Got to get a selfie with Mickey.
Yeah, and talk about the merchandising. I mean, I think Bob Iger, has one of the original Mickey Mouse watches. He's proud to say that he has one of the, but I mean, his likeness is on watches, on school bags, on T-shirts, and as you said, it's sort of like a rite of passage to wear a Mickey Mouse shirt, and and even fashion houses now have designed fashion shows based on the character of Mickey Mouse.
Go to the supermarket, you'll get your 90th anniversary Mickey Oreos.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't stop. And I think that was part of the success of Mickey in those early days of the marketing and putting the merchandise out there, which is part of how the Disney company grew and evolved. The success of Mickey, the success of the products and the merchandising brought us Snow White. That money, that film was 1937. It was $2 million. Several years to make, but the success of merchandise really sort of propelled the company into doing greater things.
And you brought up Snow White, is that Snow White was actually considered Walt's folly because everybody said that there's no way anybody's going to sit through a full-length animated or what they would refer to as a cartoon, 2-hour movie. There's no way anybody would sit through that.
Right, and at $2 million. I mean, he mortgaged everything. Bank of America stepped up and sort of, lent him the money, but he went into hock with everything. It was an extraordinarily large amount of money, and nobody really believed in it except for him. Even his brother didn't believe in it.
Yeah. Walt was the visionary. He was the creative source, and Roy was really the realist or the money man. Yeah. And sometimes they would lock horns because Walt just came up with these ideas, and he didn't want to hear about cost. No. And Roy was really the one that was sitting there crunching numbers, biting his nails, figuring out how we're going to pay for this.
They would have battles and feuds, stop talking for large stretches of time. I think in around 1961 or 62, they had a really big blowout over Disneyland and money, things like that. And there's a really nice piece, a really nice picture of Walt actually gave Roy a peace pipe and said, let's bury the hatchet, let's smoke a peace pipe, and let's move on.
Yeah, and Walt never sees his vision for Walt Disney World in Florida open because it doesn't open until '71. He passed away in '66.
Right.
But it was Roy who made it known that this venture shall forward be known as Walt Disney World because he wanted to pay tribute to his brother. Yeah. I mean, they could have, you could say, well, they could have called it Disney World, just like Disneyland, but Roy insisted that it would be known as Walt Disney World.
Roy was actually going to retire. He was set to retire around the time that Walt passed, and Roy, stepped up and wasn't going to let his baby brother's dreams, go to the grave with Walt.
Yeah.
So that's, and unfortunately, October of '71, Walt Disney World opens. December of 1971, Roy Disney dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, he did get to see it open. He, got to do the opening ceremonies, but yeah, that was that.
The company has changed and evolved over the years. I guess evolved might be the better term to describe here, but still it harkens back to this pure, innocent time in America. And it really does harken back to Walt and Roy's, boyhood in the Midwest.
Absolutely. It's very, very Americana. It's very much, people often remark that Mickey Mouse is sort of like Walt Disney's alter ego. Mm-hmm. He was a boyhood Walt Disney, or that's how Walt would view the world, through Mickey's eyes, with a dab of Charlie Chaplin, who was Walt's boyhood idol. But it was Americana. It was the Midwest. It was everything that they that they loved, and they thought the country was great and the history, and they sort of put into the parks. It's like edutainment.
Yeah.
There's sort of some education, some entertainment put together, and it's Disney's spin on what was yesterday.
Yeah, and there's that statue with the hub in front of the castle at Sleeping Beauty Castle in Disneyland, and at Cinderella Castle in Florida. And either Walt is holding Mickey's hand or Mickey is holding Walt's hand. But when you look at they're really one person. Really, they're really one and the same.
Yeah. And you can't forget Roy up at the front, sitting on the park bench with Minnie. Because if Mickey's the most famous mouse in the world, then Minnie has to be number 2.
Yeah.
She was right there from the beginning. She's not getting a lot of love these days, I don't think. But
no, Mickey's getting all the attention. It's his 90th birthday, but hey, they both look great for being 90.
They do.
We should look so good when we're 90,
right?
I want to thank Aaron Goldberg for being with us here on this edition of our program. It's all about Mickey Mouse. I've been accused of doing many things in my career, but I've never been accused of doing a Mickey Mouse show until now.
I'm honored then to be here.
Yeah, you're right. So tag, you're it. So yes, in 40 years of broadcasting, I have finally done a Mickey Mouse show. So my thanks to Aaron Goldberg for being with us. Mickey's birthday, 90 years, a true American original, a world original, if you will. So get out and enjoy and celebrate this iconic mouse, Mickey Mouse, celebrating 90 years of entertaining us in the movies, theme parks, television, you name it. Aaron Goldberg's books are available online.
Everywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere wherever books are sold, is that tagline usually is.
All right. And I want to thank Aaron again for being with us. Until the next time, thanks so much for being with us here on The Philly Factor. My name is Paul Perrello. We'll see you soon.